Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to go back on our schedule to understanding of the fundamental aspects of doing business in Africa. And I have great pleasure in inviting Mr. Dimitri Lessini to the stage, who is a partner of Leighton's LLP, solicitors and lawyers. Thank you.
So the biggest hurdle was just overcome, not tripping on the steps. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I just can't express the very real pleasure and honour to be here today. The last 2 days have been illuminating, and I've heard positive, inspirational, professional and dignified messages from all concerned. It really is very, very impressive. Right. This talk is based on 30 years and more of advising international clients. It's expressed in the way a lawyer expresses himself, so please excuse the absence of optimism, positivity, and it's just reality and caution and risk averse. But to put it in perspective, it's the way I speak to all clients, because it's a hard-nosed business and you each speak very, very different languages. And the interesting and the most important thing is that the investor has to understand what you have achieved, and you have to understand what the investor requires. First, as an investor, the most important thing is due diligence. You have to check. You have to read. You have to check. You have to consider the various elements that your investment requires. And there's a few publications. I mentioned one, which is, if I can read it from here, the World Doing Business by the World Bank. And that basically just lists all the countries and the facility of doing business and investment in that particular country. The next thing is, and it was expressed on a number of occasions yesterday, was the political uncertainty. And this is not about a specific African country, because 50, 54 dependent territories, etc. This is trying to put myself into the shoes of the investor. And one of the ministers mentioned yesterday the issue of perception. The Western press is very good at highlighting problems and difficulties overseas without giving too much regard on what happens here. And that's wrong, but it's life, and we have to deal with it. Now, one of the key things in the element of risk, political risk, is the issue of these so-called bilateral investment treaties. Now, it's not cryptocurrency, it's nothing like that, it's just an acronym. It gives protection. It gives protection in law, and it gives protection in image, and it gives protection through the World Bank and the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. Each country, so check with your host country, see what other countries it has these bits with. The UK, for example, has 117 bits. Use the resources of your home state. It will have an embassy or a high commission. Speak to the commercial attaché. Understand where there is any risk and see what you can do. Now, the first question is, whenever you approach an investment, and this perhaps is the most important, who are you dealing with? Are you dealing with a government agency? Are you dealing with a non-government agency? Are you dealing with a corporate entity? Make sure whoever you're dealing with has the power to enter into an agreement with you. because the number of occasions I have come across people who promise everything and they don't even have the authority to sign the agreement. Check the constitution of companies. Check the constitution of the agencies. For example, if you deal with the NHS in England, it's very hard to find out who has the power to sign and bind the hospital. So it exists everywhere, not just in your countries. If you're that concerned, you can take out political risk insurance. It's invaluable. You can take it out through government agencies, you can take it out through Lloyd's of London. If you're dealing with the state, ask if something goes wrong, you can commence proceedings and enforce a judgment against it. Because often states, for example, Russia, China, Portugal, will not waive sovereign immunity. And you can get a judgment and you will put it on your front fireplace, on your wall, and you will look at it and you say, I've spent millions with lawyers, but I can't enforce the judgment. So you have to be very careful. Case studies. Oh, and obviously the UK government, through the Department of International Trade, encourages investment, encourages trade. It has a whole raft of initiatives and all manners of trying to assist. Again, the UK government is sometimes a bit, you have to go to the private market first. And if you can't get the protection you require there, then you apply to the UK International Development Ministry, and if they can, they will assist. During the investment, make sure that you patrol and understand what you have signed, because if you do not do that, you will have problems. One further thing, I was going to go through a case study in terms of branded hotels. I've been involved in a number of these, and the key for the host country, the developer, is to understand that you will be asked to pay an evaluation fee, which goes to the branded hotel business, for example. But that fee, it is quite significant. But if you're allowed to basically use the letter of confirmation of engagement, the heads of terms that you have been approved as a business within whichever African country, it actually helps to raise finance and investment because it's had the seal of approval from a multinational and very well-known company. I think I've got a few minutes, I do apologize. The last thing, the future. We have all understood how important Africa is. Business can be done there. But if we don't start listening to each other, understanding what we say, and it's no good for the state to insist that certain things have to be done because it will not happen. And it's no good for the investor to have its checklist and turn up and say, right, tick, tick, tick. That is not how international finance and trade works. We have to respect our respective cultures, history, traditions. And you have to understand that no bank will finance anything unless you can satisfy its criteria. And you can talk and have the best ideas, but if you do not speak the same language, or at least find a solution to an intractable or so-called intractable problem, you will not move forward. It's a tragedy, but that's how it is. And thank you all very much. And